think that the hand of the Bush administration should lead to a stop, a suspension of the shock doctrine for what concerns Guantanamo, the Iraqi war, and the extraordinary renditions?
Do I think that they should stop? Yes. Well, more than a suspension. I mean, I see this phenomenon as very much part of what I'm describing as the shock doctrine. The Bush administration are shock addicts. They've used every possible kind of shock they can think of to discipline people and discipline countries. It's the most anti-democratic impulse to rule through fear. And of course, the world demands an end to it.
And do you think that this is possible an attack at U.S. attack to Iran, and this military action? What perspective should offer to the shock doctrine?
Well, I've learned that it's important not to underestimate the Bush administration. They are dangerous precisely because they are not running again. Sometimes it seems that they're not that concerned with whether the Republicans win the next election or not. So I think it is possible, and it's a cause for great concern, and it's very important that people take them seriously, to take these threats seriously. That said, I think that they are still concerned about opinion, not so much opinion outside the United States, but they are worried about opinion inside the United States because there are federal elections and the Republicans do want to hold on to power.
Do you think that the disciple of the shock economy appreciate and facilitate the stillness of the world governments towards the climate crisis?
I think when we see the inaction of governments, and particularly the American government, but not only the American government, with relation to the climate crisis, what we see are leaders who are very comfortable with continued instability, continued disaster, continued crisis. And I do believe that this fits very strongly with my thesis in the book, that there are larger and larger parts of the economy that profit particularly in moments of shock, in moments of crisis. It's not all aspects of the economy, but it's an ever enlarging part of the economy. So you have not just the weapons companies, but you also have a growing security state, privatized security state, homeland security, and then you also have the oil and gas industries. And these are industries whose fortunes increase the more unstable the world becomes, including natural disasters. And so what this means in particular is that these industries, while they may not be the only important industries, are the most integrated with government. These are industries that have very close ties to our political leaders, that fund their political campaigns, that hire politicians when they leave office, and have a disproportionate influence on political leaders. So I do see this inaction, this lack of urgency, as being part of the fact that it's so profitable, this model.
What can you tell us about the application of the shock doctrine in Latin America and in Africa?
Well, in Latin America has really been the laboratory for the shock doctrine. This is where it all began in Chile in 1973 after the Pinochet coup. This was really where these ideas and policies were tested. This was the first neoliberal state, Chile under Pinochet, where you had many of the policies that have now been globalized, like a flat tax, charter schools, free trade, really being tested in Chile in the 70s for the first time. You also had the first time that shock treatment was used to describe an economic transformation of a country. That was Milton Friedman's advice to Augusto Pinochet in the 70s. And then you also had shocks to bodies, shocks to people, enforcing those economic policies. So this is the story of shock beginning in Latin America, but in the 80s, in Latin America as well as in Africa, you had a handing over from the dictatorships, the military dictatorships, to what is often called the dictatorship of debt. And this was a process by which the debts of brutal regimes were passed on to democratically elected governments, often headed by liberation movements, and the people who had just freed themselves from tyranny had to inherit the debts of their dictators. This then was compounded by what is known as the debt shock, which was the so-called Volcker shock, which was when the U.S. Federal Reserve dramatically increased interest rates, so large debts became enormous debts. So that was another way of disciplining countries and enforcing orthodoxy, not through physical shocks, but through economic shocks. I have to go. It's very nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Klein.